Oh, yeah. Today on the show, we have Eric Fischgrund. He is also local to Philly, just like I am, and a part of the clean tech community here. He runs a PR firm. Well, I shouldn't say that. I learned during the episode PR is actually separate from media relations. But anyway, he runs an agency that helps companies in the clean tech sector tell their stories. He's been doing it for around 15 years. And we talk a lot about, like I just mentioned, PR versus media relations versus marketing, very tactical business things to be able to understand. And then what it means to the clean tech sector, this particular arm of business, and his perspective on how the space has developed over the last 10 or 15 years in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York areas. So, very interesting, informative conversation. Thank you, as always, to the. Thank you, as always, to the sponsors, Clean Tech Growth Lab. If you're looking to grow in clean tech, they are the people to find and work with. And the producers of this podcast, Craze and Friends. They're also amazing people. And with that, I give you Eric. Oh, here we are. Thank you to the sponsors mentioned just before we hit record. Without them, it would not be possible to interview awesome people doing awesome things like Eric. Welcome.
Thanks, Blake. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, yeah, I know this is misleading. We're digital, blah, blah, blah. But me and Eric are actually located very close to each other in the Philadelphia area. So you'll be seeing us in person, chatting it up. But I couldn't wait. I have some questions. I want to learn more about Eric's story. So I'm excited for all of us to do this. Eric, for people that don't know yet, if you could tell a little bit about who you are and what you're building.
Absolutely. And yeah, thanks again for having me, Blake. And so we can plug it, of course, real quick. Blake and I met at Founders, Funders, and Fans,
Sorry.
Philly Climate Networking Group that is steadily picking up momentum and has had some really nice turnouts lately. And our next event, I believe, is March 10th. So hopefully we'll circulate a link
Well
when this
done.
publishes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, My name is Eric Fischgrund. I'm the founder and CEO of FischTank PR. We're a media relations and corporate communications firm that specializes in the climate tech, renewables, sustainability, decarbonization, energy technology, really whatever category or name, I should say, you want to give it. Makes up about 80% of FischTank's business. We just celebrated our 12th anniversary, so we are in year number 13. Um, Personally, I got started in the climate tech, renewables sector, of course, when we were calling it green tech and
Yep.
alternative energy. This was in 2008. I was with a small firm in Hackensack, and they had a couple of solar clients and hydrogen clients. This is, of course, very early days of the category. While I'm no, Davy Crockett or Daniel Boone style outdoorsman, I'm certainly someone who loves to be outside. I love hiking, fishing, camping, really anything that's outside. And so when I saw the opportunity to work on something that, at least at the time, was being positioned as environmental,
Yeah.
I took the opportunity. I said yes. And without knowing, of course, that it would become a rapidly growing industry category.
Mm.
So in '08, '09, 2010, and the first half of 2011, I was, sort of immersing myself in all things climate tech and renewable energy. Um, I loved the subject matter, so I just kept taking on more of it. I went in-house for a couple of years. For anyone who's not in the PR or the agency world, that just means leaving an agency and then going to work in-house, so for a
Nice.
company. I went in-house for a couple of years. Loved that job very much, but started putting together a little bit of a side hustle, and in late 2013 saw the opportunity to start at the time, a freelance practice. Um, that was the early days of Fish Tank PR. No, no business plan, no real vision besides continuing to put food on the table.
Did
Um,
you always see yourself as a founder? Was it always something you ended up wanting to do?
Start a company? Absolutely. Um, absolutely. I, um, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'll be the first to admit that. But I am very entrepreneurial. I had my first job when I was 10 years old, walking down to a local farmers market and taking trash out for the vendors and carrying groceries for out to the car for the elderly or for those that are unable to do so for themselves. I would work 6, 7, 8 hour days and make 20 or $25, but in
Nice.
1994 and 1995, that was a lot of money because
Mm.
after 2 or 3 Saturdays, I could buy my own video games. And I was really the only 10-year-old who could say that. So, yes, I've always wanted to start a company. Um, I've had a number of side hustles over the years. Fish Tank just turned into, um, the most feasible, I should say, from a lifestyle standpoint.
So when you first started, you described it as a freelance gig. So what? First of all, what makes it? What is the definition to you of a freelance gig versus transitioning into the next phase of what Fish Tank became?
Sure. So, well, I was a W-2 employee still of the position where I was in house. Um, so, you know, I don't think you can truly have your own thing if you're employed by someone else, or truly have your own, full-time thing. Certainly, if you're working full-time for somebody else. Um, I had three side hustles again, so to speak. One was a solar company in New Jersey. Another was a hydrogen technology company. So two, climate tech or energy tech companies right out of the gate. And then the third was more of a warehousing and fulfillment tech platform. So um, I would say that the when I put in my notice at the in-house position, the first first or 15th that comes and goes and you don't get a regular paycheck, that is when you're really on your own. That was the hardest part for me to get used to. Was used to a steady paycheck, very fortunate. From when I graduated college in '06 until that day in early 2014,
Sure.
I was used to a steady paycheck and then it's gone. So that to me was at that point I was all in. And so I really doubled down on expanding my network and finding new clients.
At what point? At what point did it turn from just you to you and one other person, or you and two other people? I don't know. What was the first milestone where you navigated doing it outside of just yourself?
That's a great question. I would say two things happened. One, I posted on LinkedIn in probably January or February of 2014. I had just actually named the agency Fish Tank, or my practice Fish Tank, and I posted on LinkedIn about it, which and Facebook. Facebook at the time, at least for me, who no longer has it, but at the time was a much more common tool, business
Mm-hmm.
tool. I posted on both, and someone in my network from my first agency stint randomly reached out and made an introduction to, I believe, his father, who was with an angel investing firm, and that either LinkedIn or Facebook post, I think it added 2 or 3 clients in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yes, very fortunate. And it's one of the reasons why I tell a lot of young professionals and certainly my own employees always be adding on LinkedIn. And I'm not saying necessarily use it aggressively, but it is a networking tool. It's okay to cold connect with somebody, send them a message. We can talk about, LinkedIn best practices later, but I really did have a strong network on LinkedIn around the time of starting Fish Tank, and a former contact of mine from the first agency. also introduced to me my first, like if I had to say, truly legitimate client,
Yeah.
the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association, the country's oldest military nonprofit. And I'm very proud to say that they're actually still a client today.
Hey.
Yeah, very cool. Now, of course, they're rebranded as Armed Forces Mutual, but they're an amazing group, and I think so highly of all of them. Um, but they hired Fish Tank in February of 2014 off that LinkedIn post, as did the angel investor, the two companies that he'd
Yeah.
invested in. Not large retainers, as you'd expect,
Sure.
but between those and my other, side hustles, all of a sudden I had a stable of 6 clients. So that was milestone one, and precipitated milestone two, which was also on LinkedIn. A guy named Matt Bretzius, who's now my business partner, reached out to me, said, "Hey, I saw what you're doing with Fish Tank. Um, you know, if you add people, if it grows, yeah, I'd love to discuss." I said, "Okay, let me see if I can get enough business and get back to you." And a few months after that, somewhere in the early summer, we reconnected, and fast forward 12 years
Yeah.
later, and Matt's the president, and has equity in Fish Tank.
I love that.
So um, those were the two. Everything that has occurred since really stems from those two things.
Well, I got a lot more specific questions about that journey because sustaining any business for that long I think is really special. But for the sake of this
Thank you.
this episode, maybe we could do that in a future one in person. Is really get specific about it. But I want to talk to you about your expertise, your experience in PR, especially in clean tech stuff like that. So, last question about this is just how relative to what Fish Tank was at that time that you were speaking to, how has it changed?
Oh, geez. I mean, it's, when I say bigger, bigger isn't always necessarily better,
Uh huh.
we have, yeah, 20, I think 26 or 27 employees now, which is wonderful. Of course, with that comes more lawyers and more
Yeah.
accountants, and insurance and benefits and payroll, and it becomes a very serious undertaking. You're essentially responsible not just for yourself, but I have 26 or 27 other people who count on Matt and I to continue driving the business and making sure that they get paid, which is what they deserve and what they're earning. Um, so, I could answer that part of the question, a million different ways. Um, and talk about even the little things that we have to maintain. Uh, I talked about insurance and all the benefits and all of those things, but also a website and an IT team. So for me, it was a journalism major from Shippensburg University. Um, you know, I've had to learn much of this on the fly.
Yeah.
I don't have a business background. Matt and I have had to really establish all of the processes, and there's a number of challenges and headaches, of course, um, that accompany that. However, it's been a you know incredibly enriching experience.
Is the core offering the same?
Yes, actually, and that's probably the reason that we've been successful. Yes, we have expanded certain things, certain services, but companies come to Fish Tank for the same reason they came to Fish Tank 12 and a half years ago. And that's
Cool.
for meaningful press coverage. Um, I'm not bad mouthing other agencies, but media relations is certainly a bit of a lost art. When I started in media relations in 2008, I had to cold call 60 or 70 journalists a day. Um, I was working insane hours emailing and pitching journalists. Now there's also, of course, fewer journalists. There's all sorts of new media, podcasts, digital TV, newsletters, things of that nature that just weren't quite frankly, weren't a thing in 2008. Um, but also there's a lot of platforms out there. Some of them are AI, some are just old classic mail merge, where media relations is something that some firms now automate. And I think that that's why they're not as successful as FischTank. We still manually pitch journalists. We have deep reporter relationships, you name it. In the past month alone, we've had clients on Fox News, Bloomberg TV, CNN, The Wall Street Journal, New York Times, TechCrunch, Axios, Wired. I could go on, and it's really based off the strength of our media approach. So, while we are certainly a more polished firm now, at least I
Yeah,
hope
yeah.
so. Um, when I sold people on 12 and a half years ago, my ability to generate media coverage, now we're telling companies the same thing, only it's obviously about an agency.
Got it.
Um, but media relations is absolutely our differentiator, and it is the core service at Fish Tank.
Cool. Well, great transition. Let's level set then. You already spoke a lot to it. If you could define PR, if you could define media relations, just so if someone's coming into this and they're saying,
Sure.
this is cool, I don't really know what it is. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's sales, maybe branding. These different things. What is it?
Great question. Sometimes I have to ask myself what public relations is awesome. I think there's so many different aspects to it. I think when people hear PR or public relations, they often think about celebrities and politics,
Right.
um, more consumery stuff. Uh, those are none of the areas that Fish Tank works in. Talked a little bit about our practice already, the focus on climate tech and renewables and sustainability. We also do some finance, some health tech, some B2B tech. So I would say that public relations broadly is uh, to some extent it's brand reputation. To some extent it's also a tool for lead generation, for media visibility on a podcast or in a newspaper that results in someone reading it or hearing it and taking an actionable next step, visiting the website, placing an order, soliciting more information. PR can do all of these things. It can also be used to uh, reputation management, of course, for people who, or for brands who might be going through some issues. You could make the case that email marketing is part of public relations. You could make the case that there's PR reasons why companies run Super Bowl ads. PR is so broad, just like the word marketing, and I'm afraid that a lot of folks use it as a
Right.
catch-all. Media relations is much more specific. And that's why when you asked me what Fish Tank is, I told you we're a media relations and corporate communications firm. Media relations is uh, an individual such as myself or someone who works at Fish Tank reaching out to a reporter and saying, you should take a look at company A, who I represent, or you should take a look at this story and here's why. Um, or you should be aware of this upcoming news from a company because I think it's something that you might want to report on. Blake, I don't think many folks realize that when they turn on the TV or when they read the newspaper or they read an online article, I would guess 90% plus of the time, the journalist didn't come up with that story idea themselves. They got pitched by somebody that looks like me, somebody who talks like me and does what I do for a living. Um, Most of the time, the story idea comes externally and through a media relations person. So my firm goes out there and says, hey, journalists, Jane or John Doe, you should be aware of this company, this technology, this story. Would you like to interview them? Would you like to visit their site? Would you like to demo their technology? Um, and, like baseball, you succeed a certain percentage of the time. And I bet if you're doing it 25% of the time, you're doing a fine job as a
Yeah.
PR firm.
So then if there's a founder, if there's someone building something that's listening to this and they say that sounds cool, but why do I need it, relative to other things that I spend money and energy on? Or, is it like do I need to be of a certain size to really care about media relations? Either one of those.
No, great question. I would say that it's objective driven. I think that a mistake founders do make is they solicit, they hire a public relations firm or a public relations person, someone to do media relations because they think we need to be out there, or they see, oh, my competitors are out there, so I need to be out there. Um, I think any founder, especially at a startup, should be very careful about how they deploy capital. If you don't have a customer, if you don't have a product, like let's say you're in prototype mode, you don't have any initial data, even the best PR firm isn't going to be able to maintain consistent media coverage. Like, you need to have something that's also newsworthy. An idea helps, but the execution is what separates the companies that are commercially viable and who aren't. So I would say to any founder that they should identify what are their objectives as a business. Um, let's say hiring is an objective, but you, Blake, started Blake Solar. And if someone Googles Blake Solar and they see, just a website and no other mentions anywhere, they might think like, oh, this is a little bit too startup-y for me. Or let's say you need to raise capital at Blake Solar. You might want to hire a PR firm to get you some visibility prior to going out into the market to raise capital. That's another objective. Business development is arguably the largest objective. You're looking for solar customers in the Philadelphia or Eastern Pennsylvania area. What better way to do that than to be featured in the Philadelphia Inquirer talking
Sure.
about the benefits of rooftop solar, or,
Yeah, yeah.
the various podcasts, patch.coms, radio programs. PR firms are a good firm. Media relations firm can get you visibility in those in front of those audiences and can help drive your business forward.
Cool. So in this is a question I come back to in different subjects and have not been able to ask it about media relations. So this is very exciting. Is there anything and it's cool that you work with companies across different spaces. So is there anything specific about the role that media relations plays in clean tech, green tech, whatever you want to call the space? Is there a specific role that it plays in that industry that is different than other industries, or does it play pretty much the same?
I would say that there's a lot of parallels with other technology industries. Right now, AI and data centers are like the two hottest sort of technologies, and then technology conversations with respect to data centers that are happening out there. Um, I do think that plenty of technology companies, especially in climate sustainability, do hire firms like FischTank, um, because they need to get noticed and to move their brand forward, whether that's recruiting, business development, and sales, or capital raising. Um, it is certainly different than if you owned, Blake's Diner. Like, the food and beverage PR world is much different. There's only so much, I would imagine. Again, I don't work in it day to day by any means. I have limited experience, mostly helping some friends, and then the early part of my career doing a little food and beverage in restaurants. But um, what do you have? A restaurant opening, and then you might want to get a few people to come for reviews, but there's not necessarily a consistent story for most small business restaurants. Of course, if you're a chain and you're opening up
Sure.
a new restaurant every month, those are
Sure.
more news opportunities. But um, I think in the climate and energy space, energy tech space, there's also a deep need to inform. People know about restaurants. They know about reviews. They know about consumer and fashion. But the truth is, a lot of people don't know how solar works, or how an EV charges, or how their tax dollars are being deployed to strengthen the grid, right? Like, we just had 3 weeks worth of ice and snowstorms in America, and we've had some significant grid outages. And I think people are only now starting to understand, oh, well, we have the same grid infrastructure that we've had for 70 years. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's part of the reason why we're having these issues. And then hopefully that would inform, maybe their voting, or their, um, how they understand where their tax dollars go. So, it's a new industry, even though it's been around for 15 years or
Yeah.
17 years now. More, that's still early days. People are still trying to grasp what clean technology or what
Right.
renewable energy, what it can do for them. And, and we have a lot of work to do.
So that goes into my next question about since you've been in this space, and you can answer this also specifically between New Jersey and PA. But I'm curious, since you started, how have you seen media relations work, or anything that we talked about, like what it means to a company, or who's using it, or why? How has this stuff changed over the 10, 15 years that you've been doing it?
Well, I mean, without making myself seem too old, I guess, the biggest difference is the role that the internet, and more specifically social media, plays.
Okay.
My first year in public relations, I worked with people that were still faxing pitches to journalists. Um, you know, Facebook was universities only, and Twitter had just started, had just been formed, and LinkedIn was, still, just a general business networking tool. So in terms of change, and I think this is part of the reason we're seeing newsrooms get decimated, is media is getting published in many different ways now. Less people are reading the newspaper. I don't know if you saw, but the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, daily newspaper for Pittsburgh, which is no small city, they're shutting down.
Did not see that.
Um, no, it's terrible news. The Washington Post just cut 300 reporter jobs um, last week, which was very significant in our space, including, I believe, some climate tech journalists. Not all of them, but certainly some of them. So, um, the approach with media relations, I think, very much stays the same. The difference now is the platform. I mean, look at what we're discussing, right now, or what we're discussing on right now. We're on your podcast. People are paying more attention to long form journalism, excuse me, which I think is a good thing. Um, if anything, I think online articles are probably often to the detriment um, of journalism as a whole, just because they're by nature, the way that those sites are compensated, it comes from needing clicks, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why we get clickbait, which a lot of daily newspapers now adhere to. They'll even have they'll have a more salacious headline online, and then they'll have a normal headline in print.
Mm.
So that's the biggest change, is really where media is consumed. People are still consuming it. It's just, you know, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're listening to podcasts, they're relying on newsletters, trade publications. They're on Reddit, certainly. Um, so yeah, it's evolved um, significantly. And quite frankly, that's part of the reason. I hate to call myself successful, but I think that's part of the reason why my career at least has worked thus far, and why FischTank works is, I was 22 years old or 23 years old in 2008. So I had a major head start against people who had worked in PR for 15 years. I already knew how to use Facebook. I
Mm-hmm.
figured out how to use Twitter very quickly. I actually started the social media program at the firm I was at in 2008, that then has gotten acquired and merged since then. It is much larger. I'll bet you their blog is still built on my work.
Mm.
Or the initial blog posts on there, I'd have to check, are still, still things that I put together in late '08 and early 2009.
Well, so as far as the work in clean tech or with solar or things that you've done since, is there to kind of pull the overarching conversation into something tangible? Is there a good case study that you have of a company that has deployed these strategies that you're speaking to and has improved to some tangible metric of, like, here is where we were and here's the application of the concepts and here's where we got to?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Um, I mean, there's so many. We launched a hot water heat pump company about a
Okay.
year and a half ago. They got significant media coverage right out of the gate, and it resulted in hundreds of reservations for their and down payments for their product.
Do you
Um,
also work with them to set up the infrastructure so that you can ensure that the traffic from the work that you're doing, the publicity work that you're doing,
Great question.
turn into those customers?
Not often enough, Blake. No, we don't actually build the infrastructure. I do ask clients to to tell me, or to at least involve fish tanks so that we can call out if
Right.
if something is missing. Like there's certain things that are so easy. Make sure you have an information capture on your page. Make sure your meta description is working.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, make sure your site's ready when you launch. You'd be surprised how many companies have launched and their site hasn't been ready.
Well,
Um,
and yeah, that's where the question comes from. I just feel like no matter how great the work that you guys are doing or how quality the communication is, if there's not the infrastructure to receive the traffic or process the orders or stuff like that, I feel like people would get in their own way.
oh, I mean, it happens all the time. Not all the time. Happens less, certainly less now than in the early days when Fish Tank was working with more early stage companies. Um, for the most part, our clients now are fairly buttoned up. Like they
Cool.
are, they're ready for heavy bandwidth user traffic. They have a sales and marketing team in place. Um, but I mean, that part is critical. I mean, we've had activations, um, at local levels, like in daily newspapers that drive a lot of people to pick up their phone and to call and place orders or to, request more information.
Yeah. So then back to the pump company. So the way that you approached that was that also, did they need to do heavy education of their consumers, or was it mostly that people were familiar with what this product was and just what differentiated them?
They had done a fair amount of research on who their target customer was, and then Fish. So we already knew going into it, and then Fish Tank had a put the media relations program in place to reach those people. So we were targeting websites, even some that, only 30, 40,000, which I shouldn't say only, that's significant, 30,
Hmm.
40,000 unique monthly visitors. But if it's 30 or 40,000 unique monthly visitors who are also like the right market for you,
Yeah.
then that's a home run. That's a great question about ROI and media relations in general. Is like a lot of brands, Blake, they still want, they still like, oh, our goal is to be on Forbes or Yahoo Finance. Forbes has certainly some weight. I'm not trying to badmouth Forbes at all, but that's a very general audience,
Right.
and very finance driven. People are just know the Forbes logo and the Forbes name and the Forbes branding, whereas there are some podcasts out there where we get a client on there and their site traffic spikes 8x. um, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but the Volts podcast with David Roberts. I mean, he's
For
one of
sure.
the smartest guys. When our clients are on there, a lot of meaningful business outcomes come from that. Um, he has an audience of highly engaged, very smart people who just also happen to be often the same target audience that our clients, excuse me, are looking for.
Yeah. 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 So keep that in mind. We don't always want Forbes. We want the right audience, the right channels that reach
I'll
the
give
right
you
people.
a quick example of one of the ways I learned that as Fish Tank. Our very first year in business, we had this company. It was an atmospheric water generation technology company. So it uses more or less humidity, or I think their line
That's
was
cool.
producing water out of thin air, potable drinking water out of thin air.
That's crazy.
They're no longer around.
No.
This is 2014. So they, on the same day, were featured on the front page of the USA Today's business section or money section, and were also featured in a little publication called Rig Zone. They received no market feedback about the USA Today uh, piece. Rig Zone, by contrast, two Fortune 100 companies reached out to them because someone read the article. Um, And I think that speaks to the importance of going where your audience is, or where people, quality or real decision makers spend quality amount of time.
Damn, that sounds like a cool concept. I wish they were still around.
Yeah, well, I mean, their videos were very cool. We did some really fun. They had a working prototype, so we
Yeah.
did some very visual displays. But you know, that was forever ago. A lot of you know, a lot of
Tragic.
capital. I think they just couldn't raise its scale.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't
Or
know.
couldn't
It
develop
sounds
at
like
scale.
I don't know what the technology is, but it sounds crazy. Like if I had and I'm sure this is not what it was, but if I had like a water bottle and all I had to, and like I kept drinking it and all I had to do is like leave it out and it would like make it'd fill itself.
Yeah, that did much more consumer
Yeah,
oriented.
yeah,
This
yeah.
this
No,
looked like it was
that's
like a
funny.
giant dumpster
Yeah,
looking.
right, right.
But it was very cool technology. Of course, I wish they'd made it. I see a lot of really cool technologies. Some of them make it, some of them don't.
Right. Cool. Well, I this has been really informative. At least for me, and I know for a lot of other people, walking through the specifics of how to think about media relations, why, when to, what it actually is, which is not marketing, or it plays very closely with it, but it is different. It's important to think about it that way. Um, I got two more questions for you, and the first one is for you right now with where Fish Tank is at. What is the biggest hurdle, and how is it also an opportunity?
This is not a politically charged answer, but the biggest hurdle right now, certainly, I mean, anytime I think of a hurdle for Fish Tank, it means a hurdle for my clients. The biggest hurdle for my clients right now is a Department of Energy and, the current administration, which doesn't like renewables,
Yeah,
broadly. Certainly solar and wind, as well as EVs. Um, that has created a number of headaches from operationally from a press perspective. Um, but then also I've had a number of companies who have had to, pause their engagement or scale it down with Fish Tank because, um, in an unfavorable policy environment, capital also dries up, makes it harder for companies to raise capital. And when they do, they're not necessarily deploying it to communications and media relations,
sure,
which I
sure.
completely understand. So I would say that right now policy is the biggest hurdle, but I also think it's created some opportunity, certainly for Fish Tank. I don't want to get too into numbers, but
Sure.
there are PR firms that charge, two and threefold what Fish Tank charges. And whether I think they do a good job or not do a good job is irrelevant. However, um, they're charging company A $25,000 a month, and company A looks at Fish Tank and says, I can get the same, but I think better results there for 10 or 12 a month. Then that's good for my business.
Yeah.
So I think some of the larger agencies out there are losing clients because they charge an arm and a leg for average work. Let's call it that.
Well,
And I
what's
think that you have
yeah.
to be results driven in a difficult policy
Yeah.
environment, and Fish Tank is very results driven.
What are some, this is a bonus, I guess. This I wasn't planning on this, but what is some are you misconceptions about media relations or that you run into or what's an argument that people often give you that's not in favor of media
Sure.
relations?
Um, well, one is for some brands, it can be difficult to track the ROI
Sure.
if they're not paying attention to site traffic, um, or to their inbox for business inquiries. I think there could be a misconception that um, ROI is difficult to determine. Um, I think that's tied to sort of the second challenge for PR is that it's often not objective driven. As I told you before, some people hire PR firms just, because our competitors are out there, or we need to be seen, we need to get more brand visibility. Those are outcomes, not true objectives. I shared a few with you before, but we want to raise capital. We want to acquire new customers. We want to acquire more talent. These are clear objectives. And I think that if a good PR firm like Fish Tank understands those objectives, and it's our job to ask, um, then they can deliver media results that capitalize on them.
Cool.
So I think sometimes media or public relations and media relations just fall into sort of like a gray area,
Cool.
difficult to analyze, difficult to determine ROI, difficult to understand if it's working or not. And I
If
would
done
say that,
improperly, you're saying.
right, right.
Okay, good.
Or yeah, done without clear objective.
Right, right.
Um, that helps big
Got
time.
it. Cool. Super, super cool, helpful. My last one for you is with with all this work that you're doing, where you guys want to go, what inspires you?
Great question. Yeah, people and ideas. I'm still an entrepreneur at heart. I love disruptive thinking. Um, I would say that helping companies who then can, and forget when I say make a difference, I mean create jobs, supplant larger, more archaic organizations. I love watching companies succeed, especially when they're relatively new. I think also just from without trying to be too preachy, I mentioned I'm an outdoors guy. I love being outside. Um, the environment, means a lot to me. I'm an animal lover. Um, I want to help protect. I want to help protect, America, the world's beauty, to whatever limited impact I can make. Um, I lived in Asheville for 2.5 years before moving to Pennsylvania, and I think that's one of the prettiest parts of the country. Some of the mountains, and certainly some of the forests around there. In eastern Pennsylvania, we have some beautiful farmland, and also some forests and mountains, in different parts of the state. Beaches everywhere. Um, you know, I like trying to make those things better, or try to do my part to make them better. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Yes, yes, nature. I feel the same way. It's. I mean, it's nice to be able to like, sometimes people answer that question. They say nature, and they feel like it's cliche or whatever. But I don't agree, because I think it's a powerful thing to be able to look outside a window or walk outside and be inspired by something. People feel like inspiration needs to come from a specific place or be huge. Like little pieces of inspiration from everything, they add up and they become this big driving force. So I appreciate that answer. I think that's cool.
No, absolutely. I mean, and those, you hit the nail on the head. I feel sometimes most comfortable, especially with my own thinking, and you go for a walk in the woods, you come out a different person. And um, I want everyone to have those things, certainly. And I know that my certainly, like, my work alone is not going to necessarily, we're not going to, sea levels are not going to
Yeah,
drop
sure.
because Fish Tank PR is doing its thing. But I mean, I fully believe that 20 or 30 years from now, most of this country is going to run on solar plus
Yeah.
batteries, or
Right.
most of this world, excuse me. I mean, look at China is deploying more solar than anybody.
Right. Right.
Um, 5 or 6 years ago, the argument against solar was, well, China emits so much, so many emissions and coal, and
Right.
what's the point? And now it's like, well, okay, because it's the economic way forward. Byproducts of our efforts also: job creation, healthier communities,
Mm-hmm.
better quality of life, cost of living. Look at people's energy bills are just skyrocketing.
Yep.
So a lot of good, other than just the protecting nature, can come
Yeah.
from.
True. No, you're right.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right. Well, if anyone else was inspired by the conversation to follow along or get in touch, what's the best way to do so?
Connect with me on LinkedIn, or go to fishtankpr.com. That's FISCHTANKPR.com. Um, I'm the only Eric Fischgrund that I'm aware of. So if you look me up on LinkedIn, connect with me, send me a message. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, Blake. This was fun.
Absolutely, Erica. Yeah, this is great, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
All
In
right.
person, like you said.
Yes, that's right. Awesome. Thank you.